Okay, so today's going to be a pretty intense video because the situation I'm about to talk about has literally ruined a man's life. Can he rebuild? Possibly, but that would require that he be allowed to move on from these events, which the Twitter mob is apparently unwilling to let him do. The subject is Say No to Rage, also known as Lano, and the situation is an onslaught of accusations that paint him as a serial harasser, with some even going so far as to claim that he is a predator or abuser. The story begins, well, it actually begins over 5 years ago, but the main portion kicks off with a situation in 2018 involving a fellow streamer named SheSnaps, or Mind of Snaps. Snaps, as I'll call her from now on, was a friend, maybe at worst an acquaintance of Lano, who had been a guest on his podcast while exchanging messages with him for quite some time. These messages were friendly at that time. However, there are in fact two different timelines here. The first timeline is the actual occurrence of these events, and the second timeline is when they were weaponized against Lano. It's an entirely separate occurrence here. What transpired in the initial timeline, as the events actually occurred, was an incredibly complex chain of events unfolding during a Destiny-based convention. I won't turn this into a rehash of all the existing testimony because most of it is almost a year old at this point, some of it is far older, and the documents are very, very, very long. I'll have everything I used in the research of this video linked down below, however, as an index, so if you want to check it all out, feel free, it's all there down below. In summary, the convention went sideways when Lano got extremely high off of a vape pen belonging to SheSnaps. This put him on a pathway to oblivion because as the night progressed, he said a number of things and acted in a certain way, which resulted in SheSnaps feeling uncomfortable. Some of the keynote items were when he touched her hair at the dinner table, when he leaned against her on the bus, and when he would rub his own legs and say things like, "I get very sexually liberated or awakened when I'm intoxicated." These things, among others, resulted in SheSnaps claiming she felt very uncomfortable and subsequently avoiding socializing with him for the remainder of that trip. After that, the downward spiral began. There were claims that Lano stole a creator badge for future conferences, which he was banned from, or snuck into them, that he tried to be near her at those events, that he even went so far as to schedule his own meet and greet time slot to be adjacent to hers as a way to get closer deliberately. And ultimately, their relationship from a professional and personal level completely fell apart. Here's the thing. I don't care about this. No one should care at all about this because, as described from all sides, it is effectively petty high school drama. A St. Jude's legal team investigated the situation after it was reported to them, found there to be no significant action items whatsoever, and life went on for both of them. Or so they thought. Now, when I say I don't care, I don't mean that there is nothing of consequence in those interactions. If you want to say that he was creepy, perfectly fine. If you want to say that he should have acted differently, also fine. If you want to personally distance yourself from someone because of accusations like this, or their actions at conventions, all power to you. But the most critical component here is that these interactions were dealt with at the time. SheSnaps sent Lano an extremely long letter laying out all of her feelings. She told him exactly what had transpired from her own perspective, exactly why his actions were so unpleasant for her, and he profusely apologized. This was years ago. What happened after that is where things got bad, because that is when accusations of him specifically rigging his meet and greet time slot to be near her surfaced, or allegations that he either stole a creator badge or snuck into the conference that he was banned from attending. Now we move forward in time to last summer 2020. Right now, there are just two main characters, Lano, the man accused, and SheSnaps, the accuser. However, our cast is about to expand dramatically. Because 2 years after the letter had been sent, 2 years after the St. Jude's legal team had investigated the incident fully, and 2 years after they had determined that there was nothing significant to act on, SheSnaps goes public with a long, detailed document rehashing the events from 2018, reposting the letter she had previously sent him, and further explaining a few situations in the time since where he had allegedly, as I stated previously, scheduled his meet and greet purposefully during the same time slot as hers and snuck into an event while hiding his badge because he had somehow maliciously acquired a creator badge so as to get close to her again. That's when things really hit the fan because she wasn't alone. Simultaneous allegations of inappropriate conduct came cruising in from all different directions. Princess Kitley, another streamer who had long been socializing with Lano, posted a series of direct message screenshots to Medium with a detailed description of how his sexual jokes had made her uncomfortable. And Viro, another member of Lano's community previously, posted a Twitter thread about how they had engaged in a very intimate conversation at a bar one night where he asked, "Would you like to go someplace quieter, like my hotel room?" which pushed her to have a nervous breakdown and miss her flight the next day. A streamer by the name Jules Verne spoke up about how he had put his hand on her thigh during a card game at one point. Next, a streamer named Sarah Daniels jumped on board, saying he had creeped her out after he cornered her and made her feel uncomfortable at some point, so much so that she apparently, at the time, blocked it out of her memory entirely. And lastly, a streamer by the name Melrose chimed in, saying that Lano had come up to her at a bar, put his hand on her thigh, or tried to, as they talked. She denied him, and he later messaged her his hotel address. Meanwhile, her comment thread is filled with, "I'm so sorry you had to experience that. That's disgusting, and I'm so incredibly sorry this happened to you." Lano got hit from all sides, and it wasn't even over. Streamer Sh55, and I can personally attest to the fact that she is a drama fiend. This girl absolutely loves drama, seeks it out whenever possible, and I have personal experience with that from way back in the Division days. She jumped on board calling him an abuser and a predator, escalating the language dramatically. Dr. Lupo signal boosted some of the allegations out to over 1 million people and got his name literally trending on Twitter. Twitch banned his account, he lost tens of thousands of followers on all other platforms, and now, most recently, his Destiny account, the game, which is his main game and therefore effectively a major slice of his business income, has been developer banned with no option to appeal. That's important. We'll come back to that. This is where the timelines merge. Years ago, Lano had been attending conventions and made certain women feel uncomfortable. At the time, they dealt with it by sending him messages, letters, or even asking St. Jude to open a legal official investigation. 2 years later, in unison, their stories come out, and SayNoToRage gets buried. Here is one section I feel I need to highlight. These situations were largely handled before the publicity hurricane. As for instance, we can look at Princess Kitley, who posted a series of screenshots, deliberately omitting all of the parts where she sent explicit messages back to him, and she concluded with a screenshot of the lengthy message she had sent to him in light of his comments making her feel uncomfortable. I'm not going to read it all, it's pretty lengthy. There's really no point, you can if you want to, but it is phrased respectfully. Honestly, it's high quality, while bringing up the issues and clearly setting boundaries. It's a healthy thing to send. Well, SayNoToRage, Lano, responded to this with his own paragraph reading as follows. Quote, "No worries, Kitley. It was just a silly joke that I probably pushed too far from early on. Sorry, I joke like that with the guys and being dirty and never considered it would make you uncomfortable. To me, you're just a fun friend like the rest of the guys I chat with, Skype with, and play with. But you're right. It isn't cool to put you in that spot, and I'll keep it in check from now on. You're obviously a good friend that respects me to bring this to my attention, and I appreciate it." End quote. This interaction is perfectly fine. She clearly articulated what he had done to make her feel uncomfortable, and how it occurred, which is very healthy to do. He responded, apologized, said he would make sure it didn't happen again, and it didn't happen again. He had been flirtatious, she had rejected that. Whether or not I or anyone else feels from the additional context in screenshots that she was engaging with that behavior willingly as well is irrelevant. He had apologized, fixed the problem, and no further issues occurred with that person. That's dead and buried. That's a situation that has been resolved, and I am struggling greatly to understand what about that deserved to be called abuse or harassment. Likewise, additionally, many of the other claims also follow this parallel. The claim that one night in a bar he talked intimately with someone about their past and stated, "Would you like to go someplace quieter, like my hotel room?" can be considered creepy, depending on cadence, tone, or phrasing. It can be insensitive or even highly obnoxious when it's understood that the person he was asking was an openly self-professed queer individual, if his underlying intent was truly that of a sexual nature, which he disputes. But is it nervous breakdown worthy? Is it miss your next day flight worthy? Is it bring this up again years later in a slew of accusations about times where he flirted badly or hit on a woman with little success so as to ruin his entire life worthy? You tell me. Here is where I have to play some clips because the narrative that emerged on one side claimed collusion in order to coordinate these statements for maximum damage, while on the other side the narrative shaped that he was so awful, all these women, emboldened by the continuous stream of excessive bravery, posted their own encounters. One of the most vocal advocates for people to unfollow SayNoToRage on Twitter especially was Sarah Daniels. Sarah Daniels repeatedly claimed that, quote, "there wasn't a group or a plan or collusion," but casting doubt on that statement in her own words, you can hear the following.
So Danielle's partnered with Advanced GG, and they recently took up a partnership with Lano, and at the same time he got verified on Twitter. So we had all been talking about it in a thread, and it was just like, is someone gonna come out? Like, is someone gonna finally say something about this dude? Because, like, he's just, like, top of the Destiny directory all the time. Like, we have to do something. Like, something has to be done. So I was like, I'm not gonna come out. Like, I you know, he didn't touch me. He said some weird shit to me, but, like, I just don't feel like my story's powerful enough to, like, be the one to come out, like, and start the whole thing. Because we all knew about snaps, and we've known about other women in the community, but it was hard to
That begins to frame these events quite differently, because she also references, what are we going to do? He's top of the Destiny directory. In her own He Also Creeped Me Out thread, she says, quote, and Twitter out here putting verified badges on these nasty men, and female Destiny Twitter out here like, oh, that's cool, he harassed me, good thing he's glorified everywhere, and top of the directory, that's awesome, coolio boolio, end quote. The context here now has a completely different atmosphere. He was successful. He was rising in his career. He was top of the directory, verified on Twitter, gaining new contracts, and Sarah Daniels openly admits that a group of people, I am not privy to who exactly was contained within that group, were discussing what's to be done. Look at him. We need to take him down. It's already a spiderweb, but there's much more. One of the core components of the manifesto of She Snaps was that Lano had rigged his meet and greet at one of the conventions to coincide with her own. But from the receipts, email verifications, and DMs that both her and Lano shared, we can see quite clearly that his appointment was booked and confirmed a full day before hers was. He could not possibly have booked this maliciously to get closer to her, seeing as his appointment was actually scheduled first. Next up, the idea that he had somehow stolen or procured a creator badge for one of these events in an inappropriate way. Well, there is eyewitness testimony from someone also in attendance, which verifies that no, in fact, he was given the badge by a convention staff member who insisted he have one. It was confirmed by St. Jude that they legally could not bar him from the event, so his attendance was in no way violating any given order or parameter set forth by any actual authority. He did not schedule his meetup at the same time. He did not steal or otherwise maliciously acquire a creator badge. It was given to him with insistence. Furthermore, a quote from She Snaps on a future livestream came out where she discusses the events and more specifically, the moments where this most recent campaign began.
So I was like, babe, I gotta go. She posted it. It's go time. I gotta go support her. So I like reached out to my lawyer immediately because, again, I'm afraid. I'm gonna be honest. I reached out to my lawyer immediately and ran just the first draft of like the text I was going to respond to Jaws with through him, and said like, this is what I want to post. Is there anything that I need to be concerned about? And you know, he gave that base level approval that I needed. So I responded to Jaws and said like, me too, and I'm gonna need some time to compose my thoughts.
Pay close attention to the verbiage. She posted it, it's go time. That is the language of someone expecting a post to be made, understanding that when it is made, they should be ready, and springing into action instantaneously. This clip also outlines that she had contacted her lawyer, fed her proposed message through him, and then posted it in response to Jules Verne within 5 minutes. 2 minutes later, Sarah Daniels had posted her own thread. Within 1 hour, far less than that actually, Dr. Lupo and King Gothalion were on board, and eventually this snowball of impressions and engagement catapulted the topic into the trending tab, thereby ensuring that the widest possible reach of the message would be people who know nothing else and simply see the surface level accusations, never looking deeper, never finding out more. Thus, his reputation was surgically, perhaps forever, ruined based on statements from years prior that had been handled between him and those involved under most circumstances, or even in the most severe case that I could find, investigated by a full legal team who determined that there was no actionable behavior to punish whatsoever, with the added detail that in some of those other scenarios, they had been handled amicably, where he immediately stated he was sorry for ever making anyone feel uncomfortable and stopped. Or situations where he simply said, "Want to come back to my hotel room?" and the person had a nervous breakdown. Here's the part where I need to make something very clear. Even if he had been officially banned from these conventions, I would not care. I am not a fan of his. I am not here to speak for his redemption. In fact, if he got banned from a convention for making people feel uncomfortable, fine, whatever. At a certain point, it just becomes a cost-benefit equation where the hosting party needs to weigh whether or not his participation or ability to attend at all is greater than the value for other creators that might not go if he does. Whatever they decide means nothing to me, because having there be punishments for someone who makes others feel uncomfortable is not something I'm going to pretend can't or shouldn't happen. That's up to the hosting company, purely up to them. We live in a corporate world, undeniably. Likewise, someone being banned from Twitch for their actions that make fellow broadcasters uncomfortable. Is it biased? Is it inconsistent to an extreme? Absolutely, but I'm not here to say far and wide that everything these companies did in response to the situation was unfair. Lano got hit by a massive PR bomb, and there was going to be casualties. But it wasn't nearly over at this point. He lost the majority of his sponsors, untold revenue, and his entire Twitch account was banned after the accusations reached critical mass. But still, if that's all that had happened, I would not have covered this. He began to stream and rebuild on YouTube, finding a measure of success at least, until mere days ago, his entire 7-year-old Destiny game account got developer banned. Now, remember Sarah Daniels, the one who focused repeatedly on his success as a primary factor, his verified badge, and his new brand deals in her initial statement, and further discussion of the topic? To refresh everyone's memory, here she is again.
We, for a few weeks, have been talking about this particular situation because recently he was partnered with Advanced GG. And our sweet Danielle is also with Advanced GG. And he recently got verified on Twitter, and we were kind of just seeing someone who had been handsy and harassed women, and that we've heard stories of in the community for so long, being like rising to power, being promoted, being, put on a pedestal, essentially. Yes, thank you very much. Don't take my sign with you. So it was really the Advanced GG partnership that sparked us talking about, okay, well, how do we, what do we do,
Incredibly, there are tons of these moments with identical phraseology. Her framing is always about his success, and she consistently references groups where this was being discussed for weeks in advance.
I'm saying it, and here it is, and it was him. And I mean, I was like, shit. And I was talking to, I was talking to Lupo at the time, and we were trying to figure out what the to do, and so Jules tweeted that, and I was like, all right, I'm up. I have to back her up, because the more people that start saying stuff, the more serious stories are going to come out. And even though I feel like I don't have a place by just being like, he was creepy, he cornered, he just said a little too much about sex, whatever, I felt really fucking weird about saying anything, and I was like, fuck it, I'm doing it. So I said my piece, I said, I'd been cornered and creepy, etc. And then Lupo retweeted my tweet and tagged the person.
She even directly states that there was a discussion with Dr. Lupo. Her verbiage contains things like, I'm up, and continues on to say that more people need to say things. So even though her story is insignificant, even though she stated previously, he didn't touch me, he was just creepy like half the island of Manhattan, paraphrasing.
It's like, well, why didn't you report it to the police? I'm like, I can't report. Someone made me uncomfortable. I'm going to report it to the police. Like, I have to report the entire island of Manhattan.
She still piled on board a mere 7 minutes after the initial tweet, 2 minutes after She Snaps had apparently run something by a lawyer and already posted, which kicked the whole thing off. But that wasn't even the point, because Sarah Daniels, probably speaking to him directly during one of the clips that we just played, is married to a Bungie developer. Now, circling back to Destiny, SayNoToRage was developer banned with no appeal and no explanation or email. And Sarah Daniels' Bungie developer husband tweeted this image 15 minutes after the ban. Not even done. Soon after the ban, as SayNoToRage was attempting to switch his content, an image of him looking at the Outriders logo circulated on Twitter, where users were flat out advocating that people mass report to the Outriders community managers and do everything possible to make sure that they, quote, know of his predatory past that led to bans from Twitch and Destiny, end quote. Effectively, they are trying to kill his entire chance at making a living in the current game that he plays, successfully I might add at this point, and actively seeking out any future games he might even try in order to kill his future and his livelihood forever. When I began looking at all this, during the time I began researching this chain of events, the Bungie developer husband of Sarah Daniels blocked me on social media. I am preemptively, without ever having spoken to any of them, blocked by a large number of the people involved in this story. And looking at these events in context, I have one simple question to ask. Does SayNoToRage, Lano, deserve to have his entire business and financial future in this industry ruined completely because he creepily flirted a few times, and when they asked him to stop, he stopped? Is it okay to brutally, constantly harass someone because you think they harassed others for a brief period multiple years ago and have since improved dramatically? Even Sarah Daniels herself expressed, quote, "I have said clearly and so many times I felt weird about saying anything simply because he was totally fine at the last two events. Perfectly nice, and I had zero issues," end quote. Is her husband involved? The one tweeting bye-bye after SayNoToRage is developer banned with no explanation from a game in which he did not violate the terms of service in any noticeable fashion, years after any of these events actually transpired? Is any of this okay? You can think he's a creep. He was certainly inappropriate at that time when one considers the fact that he was married with a family, but what is the price for asking a woman, would you like to go someplace quieter? What is the price for getting too high and making someone feel uncomfortable with your nearly incoherent words and you rubbing your own legs? What is the price for making sexual jokes and when asked to stop, respectfully and immediately abiding by those wishes? And lastly, how long should that price be paid? 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, forever? Should it be the death of a career, no future prospects, throw him in a gulag? Where does stuff like this end? And how on earth did we end up here? In closing, I don't even enjoy his content, but watching what has happened to this man for the better part of a year is, frankly, shocking. No one is willing to speak up because if you do, especially if you exist in the Destiny community, you get crushed by larger personalities and streamers. They have banded together to make sure that no one goes against their narrative. Well, I'm not in the Destiny community, thank God. I'm not a part of that world, and unless there's some seriously more intense allegations out there with proof, I cannot comprehend how it is justified to take this man's entire life through which he supports a family, an innocent, unconnected family when considering all of these events, and burn it to the ground with salted earth to prevent anything from ever growing again, and fence him in to make sure he can never move to another game. It's disgusting. That's it. If you want support, please consider checking out Odyssey, linked down below. It's a YouTube platform alternative, diversifies my options, and it's very rewarding for its creators. Also, Locals, for $5 a month, you can access ad-free versions of all the videos and also the audio podcast versions. There's another YouTuber to check out, merch, social media, etc., etc. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night. Oh, and if the Destiny community does try to bring their band over here and brigade me and attack me with everything they have, bring it the fuck on, okay? I don't care. You're really not going to be able to do shit to me. And if you are, I have other things in the pipeline. Like, seriously, I'm not one of the people that you can just shut down because I'm obsessed with the Twitch Destiny directory and blah, blah, blah. Like, get out of here.